Georgia will win the national championship if
This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Football Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Atlanta Football Party, your home for the best Georgia Bulldogs football talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste, and I'm joined by Jarvis Davis and Brian Gebhardt. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And of course, our Atlanta Football Party is brought to you or is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, failure may not motivate Kirby Smart, the Dogs, but maybe getting snubbed does. And things are trending up for several key players ahead of the start of the season. But first, let's talk about the bigger picture of what's going to happen at the end of the season. Jarvis, what has to go right in order for these Georgia Bulldogs to be playing in the last game of the season?
Carson Beck has to have a Heisman Trophy season. Like, he has to be the front runner for that particular trophy, because I feel like as Carson Beck goes, it's going to be how Georgia goes, because obviously there are other important pieces to how this thing goes as far as how they're able to run the football with Trevor Etienne. That is important to me, and I know it's important to Kirby, because I feel like that balance has always, because we know Mike Bobo can get a little pass happy sometimes from time to time, and that's easy to do when you have a guy like Carson Beck. But I feel like if they are still able to remain balanced and able to highlight Carson Beck in this offense this year, and I feel like the national championship will be something that they will be playing for at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Beck's going to take that next step, just like Jarvis said as well. Like last year, it felt like, okay, he's the quarterback. He's one of the leaders of the team, but it wasn't his team. He wasn't the leader of the whole thing. It really felt like Brock Bowers and a handful of other guys that made up kind of the main leadership unit on this team. And he's got to just take this thing by the horns and roll with it. And to the point of Jarvis saying Bobo, he's also got to be better when it matters most. Like there's certain play calls on third down in that SEC championship that he needs to be more dynamic and make sure. And that should be flushed out throughout the season when you make those trips to Texas and Ole Miss and you host Tennessee and you go through all those things. And the other thing to piggyback that, and this goes for any football team, right? It's just the health, because when you stepped into that SEC championship last year, you did have Ladd and Brock banged up. So that depth that Kirby preaches about all the time, we've talked about, okay, who's going to emerge in that wide receiver room? We've mentioned some of the names, but there really needs to be 4, 5, 6 guys that are able to make plays in case someone goes down, and you can't just fall back on one person. So I think Beck's development and ultimately getting more people involved at a higher level is going to help the Dogs make another run at a natty.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, Jarvis, having the ability to really flesh out the offense, but in a way that highlights Carson Beck and makes it known that, hey, this is his team. As Carson Beck goes, so goes this team, because it still kind of felt a little bit like the Stetson Bennett the fourth shadow was there last season, almost like they didn't quite know what to do with Carson. Because
hero.
Like terms like on and off the field, like right. Stetson Bennett the fourth was just somewhere lurking, and almost like they weren't really quite sure what to do with Carson Beck, even though they'd had him there for a couple of years as an understudy, so be it. So yeah, I think that's a great point. And BG, you mentioned as well something that we'll talk about a little bit later, and that's the injury piece. I thought that was one of the positives, if not the most positive thing coming out of SEC Media Days, was Kirby Smart giving us some very, very encouraging updates. But you also hope that not only are those the kind of updates that get them going early in the season when they face a Clemson, or even early in September when they head to Tuscaloosa, but that this is a conversation that we're having, to Jarvis's point, by the end of the season, because that health for this entire program on both sides of the ball and even special teams actually holds up for the entirety of the season. But speaking of Carson, a lot of people said he kind of won the day back in Dallas for SEC Media Days. And I thought there was one clip in particular, one thing that he said that was interesting for me. And then Michael Williams, the way he answered this one question I thought was interesting as well. Let me give you guys a quick quote from Carson. He said, "I'm actually super excited about the rules now allowing iPads on the sidelines. There's so many different situations that happen throughout a game, but when situations repeat, a lot of defensive coordinators end up going back to what worked before and the repeat calls. So being able to see those things, it feels like you might have one step on a defensive coordinator."
Mm. Yeah, I was going to say that this is something that college football should have been doing, right? Because like coming to the 21st century of football, like an iPad on the sideline, like what is y'all haven't been able to do that before? Like,
Yeah.
like come on now, like NCAA is like they're just so archaic and so behind on every particular situation. It just really feels like this is a matter of coming into like what football is, and that's what they should be doing, right? This is something that this should not be breaking news, right? This should be something that should have happened before, and it's just to Carson Beck's point, like that is almost kind of an advantage, right? Because if you aren't able to see what they were doing against said play that didn't work or whatever, that can put the offense at a disadvantage. Now, granted, ask me as a former defensive lineman, do the offense need more provisions, to be successful? Probably not. But I think that this is going to be good for Carson Beck. Obviously, Mike Bobo, like BG mentioned, as far as being in certain situations, down the distance, that stuff matters, man. What defensive coordinators are going to do or what offensive coordinators are going to do. So, yeah, I feel like, hey, as much information as both sides can have, but during the game, so they can make adjustments, the better.
It's funny with the iPad thing. I was looking for a charger earlier today, and I poked around. And I saw it, and I have the original iPad. We're talking about like 101, like the very first one. I wanted at something at work. I've had that thing for 15, 20 years at this point. Like the fact that it's 2024 and we're just getting iPads on the field for college now is crazy, especially because there's so much money like at the NFL level too, in terms of evaluating quarterbacks and processing information. I think this is going to revolutionize the way that people just go about evaluating quarterbacks and quarterback play, because they're able to, really dive in with their coaches in terms of, okay, how was he able to go about this? How was he able to see this? And I think that's going to be crucial for these quarterbacks moving forward. And Beck, as much experience as he's had in terms of sitting and waiting and not transferring and being behind Stetson Bennett and then playing a whole year, I think the addition of the iPad is going to be really big for him, and almost, to Jay's point, like an advantage for him just with the experience that he's had. So this can be really fun. And the other thing that's fun with this communication too, I don't know if you saw the piece about Mike Bobo and the headset, because apparently Bobo can't hear very well, and they're like screaming at each other in the headset, and you got to like really yell at Bobo. So that's gonna be funny, because we're gonna have some like hot mic moments or things that TV pick up on the field. So someone just pay attention to maybe week one when you watch that Clemson game. Like, did we just say that? So that might be a little wrinkle for people watching on TV at home.
But this whole iPad thing might just also distinguish the elite processors under center from the rest. So it'll be interesting to see how it actually plays out on so many levels. Now, Michael, our guy, here's our Michael moment where he was asked to describe himself. So this is Michael in the third person. I like to say Michael is a generational talent. The things that he can do, he's very, very important to our defense. We wouldn't be the same without him. Just the type of guy that he is, I think that's the most important thing. He's a great guy, just his competitive spirit, just the way he goes about his business is huge. And I think that's why he works so well in our defense. He's a big part of what we do.
I love it. I love it. Oh my God. I love the confidence. I love the being able to just basically put yourself out there to say, hey, man, I'm about to talk in third person. I don't give a crap. Y'all can write it down, quote it, all that good stuff. Yeah, I just love that. I play with a guy like Michael. I know Michael. I don't know him personally, but I know guys that play like Michael. So yeah, for him to come out there like that during media day, it's always one. It's always one dude, because we used to always joke about like, all right, who's going to media days and everything for the SIAC with coach and everything. And it seemed like Coach always used to pick the boring cats because he knew who not to bring because of moments like Michael. He knew not to bring Jarvis because Jarvis probably going to say something very close to what Michael said.
This reminds me of like bios at work when they're like, when you and all of us, we worked in media for a while collectively all around, right? And then all of a sudden you just got to be your own hype person. Like, it's so weird. You're just like, all right, how do I make myself sound good, but not too much? I don't know if I would go as far as writing a third person, but it's sort of like hard to, you know what I mean? Or first person, I should say, or whatever. But yeah, that's what it reminded me of. I love the confidence. I mean, you ask the question, you got to answer it. Some of these things are, all right, describe yourself. Let's have fun with it. Let's put it in this way. And he said it in kind of a very, there's a nice, like, concise answer, if you will.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was fun.
Almost rehearsed, BG.
Yeah. Well,
he was practicing that.
Kirby Smart. It was giving Kirby. Like, I would expect, if you listen to the way he answered,
he probably was mimicking Kirby. I would not be surprised he was mimicking Kirby.
Yeah.
I said,
certain dudes can poke fun at the head coach. Michael is one of them. You got to be really good to do it.
Yes. And so we're talking about the big day that UGA had in Dallas for SEC Media Days, the big day we hope that they'll have at the end of the season. But they also had a big day Sunday, no pun intended. Cortez Smith, the 6'3", 315-pound rising senior out of Parkview, announced his decision to commit. He is just a massive human, but more importantly, you look at the fact that he is the 6th ranked interior O lineman in the country, a guy that they would hope can step in to fill in the shoes of Cedric Van Granger.
Yeah, I think this is the type of guy, when you think about the school that's coming from, Parkview, Gwinnett County. I was joking with one of my homeboys the other day, or we were talking about, where he was going to take his son and move his son around and see where he's going to go to high school and middle school and everything like that. He was thinking about Gwinnett County. And my other partner who lives out in Gwinnett County said, yep, welcome to the SEC. Hey, Gwinnett County got it going on, Jack, because I remember DeKalb County and Fulton County were like the schools where the big schools used to flock to. Now it's Gwinnett. That has changed. It's Gwinnett County. They are just pumping out cats, and I'm shout out to this Cortez Smith cat because he's for quite some time, and I feel like he saw himself going to Georgia for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, always the most, to me, like the most underrated position on the football field is interior offensive line. We always talk about tackles if we talk offensive line most of the time. So to get a guy, and Jarvis and I were just talking a little bit before the show had started. We're just sitting there like 6'3", 310 is that's a big guy, right? But he's small now. Like, this is a small offensive line recruit compared to some of these other guys that Georgia has.
Right. The guy that got the OT last week. You're right.
Yeah. The fact that the 6'3", 310 guy isn't your left tackle, your right tackle is still like, I know we've been there and we've been there for a while, but it still is crazy to me. But yeah, to get another in-state recruit, Kirby loves getting the in-state cats, and the fact that he was able to get this guy Cortez from Parkview, just a nice addition, adding to that depth and continuing to build that interior.
And more positives coming out of Athens. Things are trending up for a couple of players ahead of the start of the season. We'll go between the hedges to discuss. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. You do too. And I love them so much that I never want them to stop. Literally, I'm watching from sunup to sundown. But of course, the playoffs have wound down in all sports, NHL, NBA. So we get fewer games. And the sports aren't sportsing like we want them to as a result, because now we also have an Olympic break where we won't see the WNBA in action for at least a month. But FanDuel allows you to keep the sports going whenever you want. So not all is lost. And of course, Major League Baseball is back from their all-star break as well. So all you have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. And you know that we are that much closer. Man, we're talking about 5 weeks away from the season opener for UGA. So this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. That's FanDuel.com to make the most of your summer. And FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Now, Kirby Smart gave some injury updates on several players during SEC Media Days. Which one? I'm going to give you guys several of them and kind of talk through which ones you feel that's a positive note, or which ones do you feel maybe you're concerned about with that Georgia Clemson season opener being just about 5 weeks away, and of course, fall camp ready to begin. So, BG, let's start with Malachi Starks. He missed spring practice after undergoing shoulder surgery. Kirby said, quote, "It's just typical surgery, shoulder surgery. We have labor and repair." It wasn't even, in fact, he said, "I wasn't even thinking of him as an injury guy."
Yeah, I don't think he's worried at all to that point at the end of the comment there. And I think it shows by him being at media days and him planning on being at media days and then going. If you had any sort of story of like, ooh, is he going to go? Is he not? Maybe they're thinking about somebody else, or he has to do some sort of rehab or anything. But I think this is all planned. It's a pretty common surgery too for football players as well to have this. So I think there's no worries at all. I think he'll be a full go come week 1 against Clemson.
And this is huge, right? This because when you think about what Malachi Starks bring to the table, you talk about a guy who's going to be potentially going to be a first round pick. Not potentially, he's going to be a first round pick.
Yeah.
And all of this new DB room, new starters, that they're going to have to kind of find some continuity and be able to get together. Malachi Starks is going to be the catalyst for that and on the back end of that defense. So for him to be in a situation like BG mentioned, that hey, it's not that big concern. You're not too concerned. You're going to be ready for fall camp, be full go. That is the guy that is going to help get that DB room and erase some of those concerns that people have because you got new guys coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing we talk about Michael Williams a lot and the potential of him being a number 1 or a top 5 pick, and safeties aren't necessarily viewed the same way. So it's not like Malachi is going to be a number 1 or probably a top 5 pick, but he's right there. And like, he might be the best player in the country, like throw positions out. Like if you're just looking at just best football player, he's on that very short list. You saw, and EA Sports acknowledged that as well, NCAA 25, where he's part of that group. If you're pretty much in that top 10, which Georgia had a couple guys in there, he's in that mix. So I hope he gets hyped up and plays to his ability so he can be talked about in that way.
Yeah, definitely. And then there was Branson Robinson. JD, of course, he ruptured his patella tendon, missed the 2023 season. Kirby said, quote, "He looks great out there running. His weight is down, which I think is going to put less pressure on that injury and those knees. I don't know if he'll be 100% at the start of camp, but I feel like he'll be close."
Ooh, that lets me know that, hey, he still got a little ways to go, right? Not necessarily that he won't be ready for the opener, but they're going to string him along because you're able to do that because you got a guy like Trevor Etienne just sitting there that's chilling. But oh my gosh, Branson Robinson is a did God just like sculpt him personally? Yeah. And it's just like, here you go, young man. College football player. Like he had that dude is ridiculously fit. That's probably the best way I can put it right now. Yeah, without cussing. But for him to be in that situation where he is, it's really good because you have somebody who has as much talent, if not more, and Trevor Etienne. So you don't have to worry about rushing him back because he's your lead back. So I think he's in a good spot. But yeah, I feel overall he's going to be strung along a little bit, and they kind of feed him some, feed him some reps as they go through fall camp. And then once the season gets started, I feel like they'll probably reevaluate and say, okay, we can probably start getting this guy X amount of snaps for this game this week because of the game plan that they have in place.
Yeah. I'm really hoping he can bounce back. When he first ran, I mean, it's sacrilegious, and I'm not the first person to do this, but it gives you a little flash of Nick Chubb, which is, again, to get to that level but to be that big and that fast and to show that burst, this is going to be the longest college season we've ever had. So the idea of bringing him along slowly is even going to be more important than it's been in the past. And I think if he can get back and build himself up to that point, I think he'll be one of the two closers between him and Roderick Robinson there as well. So if he can be part of that group where, okay, we're giving him 6 to 8 carries in the second half of games when they're potentially up, or if it's a score or two and they're really able to do that after using ETN in the first part of the game, I think that would be really big for him. And I'm excited. I think the range of outcome for what could happen for him this season is really, really wide.
Yeah, and kind of add to what you're saying, BG, we've seen Kirby sprinkle exactly what you said almost every time he's had an opportunity to speak, talking about long season. Like he's preparing for this, and he's talking about making sure everyone is going to be healthy, and that's the big thing for Georgia. We talked about what they're going to be able to do to win a natty. That's going to be part of it. That's going to be a big part of it. Not only with Carson Beck's play, but everybody being able to remain healthy.
Indeed. And Smael Mondon missed spring practice with a foot injury. We know there are some other challenges with him, but relating to on the field, Kirby said, Smael's still battling back. I don't know if he'll be clear for fall camp or not. He should be close.
Yeah, foot injuries are always concerning. You know, I know every injury in football is not great, but foot ones always, because they just linger and they go, and you know, every position's an explosive position in that way. And hopefully Georgia has the depth where, you know, if he's not ready to be full go or not a full allotment of snaps that week one, that they can mix him in, which I could very much see against Clemson in that way. So this one makes me a little nervous just because of his experience in that linebacking core, but ultimately I think he'll, you know, be able to get there at least a couple weeks into the season.
And I really feel like this is why you play your young pups, right? Because of guys who are veterans probably might, you know, have to deal with some injuries, and that's why it was good for that young linebacker core be able to get those necessary snaps in last year. And you know, those guys still are learning. But we come, Kirby even mentioned it during spring practice and talking about how those guys still got a little ways to go. So thankfully those guys have been on the field and we've seen them. We've seen flashes of why they recruited to Georgia. So, you know, if Smael is out and have to be brought along, like say Branson Robinson, I feel like the Georgia would be just fine.
Yeah, and he also gave some updates on Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, saying he had a significant foot injury as well, that we think he'll be good to go by fall camp, but it's something that you have to be really smart about, that load management and the amount of work you put into it. And also he said with Ryan Puglisi, who of course missed G-Day due to a knee injury, Ryan's health looks great in terms of running and doing the summer stuff. Now, failure may not motivate Kirby Smart and the Dogs, but maybe some snubs will, and we hear somebody's official. We'll talk about it in Next Up. Locked On Sports Today is a free 24/7 sports streaming channel that is programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all the noise. Locked On Sports Today also brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So guys, we're waiting for another list. And we got it. The 2024 preseason media days, all SEC team was announced to wrap media days the week in Dallas. So as always, you've got snubs. I want to know what's the most egregious snubs to you. And that could be whether you feel there was a Georgia player who should have maybe been higher up than second team, third team. And also if you feel there's a player that actually did not make the list. So let's start on offense, JD. First team, Carson Beck, Trevor Etienne, Tate Ratledge. Second team, Dylan Fairchild, Xavier Truss. And third team, Oscar Delp, Ernest Green III, and Dominic Lovett.
Wow, I think Dominic Lovett is a little too low because I feel like he's going to have a breakout year this year. This is the guy that we know the type of numbers he can put up because when he transferred from Mizzou, he was one of those guys, you know. So when you think about what he's able to bring to the table, the rapport he was able to build with Carson Beck, yeah, I think third team is a little low. So I think he should be in that second team. I won't go first team because we know there are a lot of names, you know, that are going to be on that one. But I feel like he can definitely squeeze into that second team. And I would flip Ernest Green and Xavier Truss because Xavier Truss is more so of a rotational guy. I know he's a veteran. He's been around for 6 years now, I think. So, you know, but I think Ernest Green is one of the next tackle for Georgia to be able to play his way into the NFL. So I think I will flip flop those guys.
Yeah. What sticks out about this too, Jarvis just talked about him, is the fact that there's 4 offensive linemen for Georgia on this list, and one that is not on there and hasn't shown anything on film yet as far as games and that type of thing is Jared Wilson, that might be able to get in there this year, and I think ultimately winds up on one of these teams, partially because of how good of a player he is too, but just playing next to those other offensive linemen is going to make you look good as well. So I could see him getting up into that spot. And then from the wide receiver room, it would have been good. It would have been nice to see Dylan Bell on there, I think, on that third team spot. I know he made it down there further along on the list, which we'll get to coming up here in just a minute. But I thought he would have made it maybe third team. I don't think he would have been second team necessarily, but I think he'll ultimately wind up on there after the season too.
Yeah, when you kind of look cross-referencing multiple articles locally and nationally, he's the one name that stuck out on every list saying, be careful, because that's the guy that's going to show out to the point where he's going to make him vault himself into an NFL conversation, because he looks like he'll be the guy to have that breakout year. Now on defense, the first team, Nazir Stackhouse, Malachi Starks, Michael Williams. Second team, Smael Mondon. Third team, Dalen Everett. JD, BG, what do we think about how the defense played out for UGA?
I think kind of falls right into play. When you think about this defense as a whole, we know what Michael has to bring it to the table in order to be able to be that guy. It's like he mentioned, like he mentioned at SEC Media Days. So I feel like this kind of is on par with what I feel like this defense is going to be able to do. I don't know why I feel like KJ Bolden might slide up in there, because he could be one of the newcomer freshman of the year or whatever. He can be that guy to come in and make some plays because we know he's going to get some time. So, but outside of that, I feel like this is kind of right on par with what we expect from this side of the football.
When you talk about Bolden there, Jarvis, there was a quote from Kirby last week, and forgive me because I don't have it right in front of me, but I'll sort of paraphrase it, is the fact that he said he's going to help us right away. Like he's got the chance to come. And Kirby doesn't say that about younger players like that. No. He's doing all the right things. He's taking all the right reps. We're working on our depth. We're doing this. With Bolden, it was I think he's going to be able to help us right away. So the fact that you saw that, you might see him flash. And you remember Malachi came on the scene with that pick, and it was just like a moment right away. And doubtful he gets something like that, but you're going to get on there, and Bolden I think is going to pop a little bit. The one omission to me, I saw enough from him at the end of the season is CJ Allen. I think he should be, whether it be second or third team. He's a stud, and I think over the course of the season, he's going to be right up there as one of the best linebackers, not only in the SEC but in the country. So he was a snub a little bit to me, and it's probably just because lack of experience, lack of gameplay, and that sort of thing. But he's going to be there.
Yeah, well, the guy who made the first team, Carson Beck, is also kind of feeling like a winner, kind of like feeling like he's number one, because apparently he's so excited about certain thing that happened in his life. He had to confirm it, BG, on the ship. He posts. So college football season has officially started, because now Carson Beck is officially official with Hannah Cavender.
That's right.
We started talking about this last week, right? But you know how it goes. Until it's on social, it's not official. But they did post about 24 hours ago. So we now know that they are officially together.
Yep. And we have a little we have that little text group, our little email thread that we talk about before the show. And I'm always the one, I'm up to date on the Cavender thing, just because I'm doing the daily, and I'm like, hey guys, we gotta get this in. And Tenitra's like, we got so many topics. Are we gonna fit this in? I was like, no, we gotta get it in here, because it's been a big story just because of the social media following that they have and everything. And I just want to give kudos to Beck for already probably having a PR team, which I'm sure he does. But the fact that he waited till after SEC Media Days on the Monday to do it, and not only did he wait, but then he did it on a Monday to make sure it was in the news cycle too.
Oh, yeah,
he dropped this on a Friday. He was like, I want y'all to know, but I didn't want it to be a distraction from SEC Media Days. So now it's a thing. Congratulations to him. I know people are having fun with all this, but I hope they're happy and all things work out with all of that. So, but it was funny that waited. Oh, okay. It's interesting that you chose this week and this day.
Yeah.
So,
just want to let y'all know, like, Carson Beck gonna ride this thing on out. Just let y'all know. Just hear me now.
Yes. And I'm okay with that this week, because remember last week I was taking issue with it, like, oh my goodness, Stay focused. I need you to stay focused. You need to get back into this national championship situation.
Hey, it's a part of focus, T. You know, you
Right.
get one, you focus. You're able to focus. If you got 12, it's hard to focus. If you get one, it's easy to focus. You know what I'm saying? Like,
You must not have
I'm just
but
thinking.
anyway.
Not that I'm speaking from experience or anything like that. I'm just saying.
Actually, you actually make a great point, because in all seriousness, Hannah Cavender is someone who's accustomed to this life, being in the spotlight and knowing how to manage it and kind of leverage it. This is actually a little bit new to Carson Beck. So I think that for someone like her, who's still a student athlete, she's been a student athlete and someone who's been in that space for quite a while, real talk, it may not actually be a bad situation, because she'll know, like, okay, here are the pitfalls. Here is what's going to come our way, especially when you play this game or when you do this or that. So here's how you need to manage it. So yeah, in addition to a PR team that he probably has, heck, she has one, and somebody gave some serious guidance, because you know how you can go on social media and you can schedule something to happen. And so literally, if you see the picture, it's like they're, them walking away. So I feel like that was almost like a drop the mic moment, which was very cool. And then you see another picture with them. And she's a twin, of course. So it's with her sister Haley, who's dating Jake Ferguson from the Dallas Cowboys. So I was like, yeah, okay. I see you, Jake. I see you, Carson. I see you, Cavender twins. Not bad at all. Carry on, good people. Carry on.
You're going to ride this thing on out.
Not bad anymore, because you're also right. You get the right one, and you can ride this all the way to the bank. Thanks to our everydayers for making the Atlanta Football Party your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked On Bulldogs for your second listen, and be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also free and available wherever you download your podcast. We'll see you on the Atlanta Sports Party Thursday.